Hi everyone, this is Paul here from the Magdalene Centre. Today I'm doing the astrology report for the North Node in Cancer, South Node in Capricorn, which, if you follow the true North Node, begins on the 6th of November, finishes on the 4th or 5th of May next year. If you prefer to go with the mean node, then this begins on the 15th of November and finishes on the 5th of June next year. So I'll be outlining the themes for this particular transit and giving over an idea of what kind of lessons we'll be learning over the next 18 months. Before I do that though, I just want to clarify, as I always do, that the astrology doesn't control our lives. It merely helps us to understand what lessons are to be learned at this time, what kind of energies are present, and how can we best align ourselves with them so we can achieve maximum growth from it. But for anything to actually change, it requires that we participate with the process, that we engage with it consciously, and the more we use it to illuminate ourselves and figure out who we are, the more able we are to use it for its proper use as such. Now, with the North Node and South Node changing, and for those of you who are less familiar with these, the South Node represents pretty much where we're coming from. It's the karma that we bring, that's being highlighted from the collective past. Whilst the North Node is highlighting the key lessons that we need to learn in order to balance it out. So in the past 18 months we've had the South Node in Aquarius, so it's been dealing with issues like having to overcome tendencies to be aloof, to constantly need more information before we actually make a decision or get things started, and any tendency to go with the crowd rather than being true to who we are. So the past 18 months, the North Node in Leo has been the antidote to that. It's about getting in touch with who we are. It's about understanding what dreams do we want to manifest, and it's having the courage to start a project even if we don't have all the information to hand, and trust that through that creative process any resources that we need will come to us, or we'll learn as we're going along what changes need to be made to what we're doing in order to refine it. But it's getting started and having that creativity to begin with. Now, with the South Node moving into Capricorn, what we're looking at here is areas around where do we have a tendency to or need to control everything. Where do we have an overdeveloped sense of responsibility, so we're taking responsibility for things which we don't need to, because so we end up treading on other people's toes or preventing them from growing. And it's also, where do we pursue goals that are socially acceptable rather than what are true to who we are, and where do we fear emotions and intimacy in relationships, so we stick with a sense of obligations and duties and fulfilling those rather than seeking actual connection with one another. More often than not, when the nodes first change sign, it's the South Node that we experience first, because that's what the collective is used to, whereas the North Node is what we need to be moving towards. So during this time, it's important that we pay close attention to where do we tend to feel tired and weary from constantly overworking, where we're so obsessed with fulfilling responsibilities that we forget to enjoy the process, and where we're so fixated on goals and having to set goals that are difficult because we think that they have to be difficult to be important, to the point that we've forgotten to enjoy the process. Because at the end of the day, life itself isn't about the destination, it's about the journey. And likewise, any path towards a given goal, it's important that the actual process or the journey itself to achieving that goal is enjoyed, is engaged in, because that's where the learning takes place. It's not achieving the goal that's the true important thing, it's the process along the way. What do we learn about ourselves? What do we learn about growing, and how do we become more capable as a result of that? Now, with this North Node moving into Cancer, this is the area that we need to move into. So one of the core areas to work on here is things like empathy and humility. It's being honest with ourselves. It's having the courage to face emotions that underlie things. It's because with Capricorn, we can be very stuck or emotionally fixed to the point that we feel emotionally numb as such, and Cancer remind us to get back in touch with the emotions, to get back in touch with our own personal dreams. So rather than pursuing goals which we think are socially acceptable but not right for who we are, the North Node in Cancer asks us to be honest with ourselves and say, do we really want to be doing this? Are we just doing things to try and gain respect, gain social status, to gain other people's admiration? And is it something that we actually feel is right for who we are? So it's learn to do the things which are right for who we are, rather than doing things to try and gain social approval. Because it's only when we're doing things that are right for who we are that the people who will best vibe with us and best connect with us will then naturally turn up and help us with the process, as it were. And the North Node in Cancer also reminds us to remember our human sides. We're not just here to fulfill obligations, we're not just here to work and slave away and then hope that our legacy lasts after us. Part of it is about enjoying the process, it's about that human connection, it's about relating with one another. So it's having the courage to be honest with ourselves about how we really feel about goals, and only really pursuing the ones that are right for who we are, that will help us grow as individuals rather than being stuck in a social role. And by accepting our own humanity, accepting our own flaws with humility, we can then extend that kind of empathy and compassion towards other people. Because if we're harsh on ourselves and we unforgiving in that respect, chances are we'll be giving that to other people as well. And when other people do express emotions for whatever reason, if we fear emotions, then we may feel that compulsion to try and control it, to get them to stop crying at any cost, or to try and change things. It's okay, all well and good having solutions, but it's important to factor in the human side of it. I'm not saying that we then become obsessed with emotions. I'm not saying that we identify with our feelings, or that we use feelings to try and control situations. What I am saying is it's important that we stay true to who we are, to connect with the core of who we are. Another aspect of Cancer is about forming an emotional foundation, emotional security, and it's to creating that on the inside. It's not relying on other people to do it, it's not looking for a mother figure, it's about understanding how do we need to be nurtured, how do we need to nurture ourselves, and it's through connecting with the ability to nurture ourselves that we can then better able to nurture other people. So a big part of North Node in Cancer will be to slow down, to run constantly rushing around, constantly trying to fill our time with work to avoid our feelings. It's take that time to slow down and reconnect with our internal landscape. Because if we're not connected with our inner nature, whatever we're doing externally is very unlikely to be right for who we are. It's very unlikely to be an accurate reflection of who we are. It's more likely something that we're doing to gain social acceptance or respect from other people. But if we really want people to respect us, or the right people to respect us, it requires that we be who we are, that we only pursue the goals that are actually right for who we are and are an accurate reflection of who we are, and that we be honest about ourselves, be honest about our own feelings. It's getting connected with our own feeling nature, because there's, in some essences, an enormous wellspring of energy within, but to tap into it and channel it into work, we have to overcome any fear of emotions. We need to overcome any fear of not being respected by other people as such, and learn to connect with those feelings and let them guide us. Because through connecting with our own emotions that we can then better understand and appreciate other people's fluctuating moods. So when people are going through a period where they're not necessarily feeling their usual selves, rather than trying to fix it, we accept that person's fluctuating moods with compassion and non-judgmental attitude, and it allows a more closer form of intimacy to occur. So rather than trying to fix the other person or get them to stop crying or feeling emotional, it's seeking to understand it through understanding our own emotional processes, and through doing that, allowing the other person to feel their feelings without having to, or without invalidates them in some respects, it allows a closer rapport to build, and the kind of intimacy that the North Node in Cancer is craving, where there's that emotional closeness, that emotional bond, and a sense of trust through being able to be who we are without someone trying to fix us or trying to get us to be something that we're not. So it's a key time for us to re-embrace our humanity, if you like. It's to become humble again, to learn to be more empathetic towards one another, rather than this atmosphere of constant judgment and polarisation that we've seen in the past year or so. But it requires that we have the courage to do the work ourselves. We can't expect other people to do the work and we just sit back on our laurels and not learn the lessons. This is something that we all need to learn to some extent or another. Some people are better embodiments of the lessons than others, but the more we can connect with our inner nature, to be more empathetic towards one another and allow ourselves to be humble rather than having to prove ourselves all the time, a greater sense of fulfillment can occur, where we're being honest with ourselves, we're achieving greater intimacy through that emotional connection with one another, and remain humble, and through understanding that we don't know everything about the situation. It's not our place to try and take control without knowing the full facts, and it's not, if we seek to constantly try and control everything around us in order to feel comfortable, it can be incredibly exhausting because we're wasting energy trying to control something that we can't control. It's just learning to let go of that need to control or to fix other people in order to feel comfortable, and instead allow the other person to be who they are, and we need to focus on being who we are as well, through connecting with those emotions, connecting with those feelings, and connecting with that humility that connects us to our core nature and that deeply human side, that vulnerable side that needs that connection, that needs that sense of belonging, if you like. But for that to truly occur, we have to first stop trying to control our emotions or suppress them, and to stop obsessing over goals at the expense of our feelings, and instead get back in touch with the core of who we are, and to learn to be more empathetic and humble with one another, to accepting the more human side of each other, and to restore our own humanity, if you like, through reconnecting with those parts of ourselves that help us connect with one another, that allow nurturing to unfold between people, that allow a deeper intimacy and deeper trust through having feelings seen, acknowledged and validated, but at the same time obviously not indulging in emotions, not using emotions to control other people. It's just being in touch with them, understanding what they're trying to tell us about something, and allow it to foster empathy and compassion with one another, rather than judgment and a need to control and dominate. So I hope that's a useful guide for the North and South nodes. There's a lot to take on board, but this is an 18-month lesson. It's something that will be unfolding step by step, but the more we understand the need to break through the obsession with fulfilling goals and obsessing about the goal and ignoring the process, and instead learn to live each day, learn to enjoy the process, to revel in the different aspects of growth, and as we go along that journey towards the goal, we appreciate better what we're learning at the time, how we're growing as an individual, and it brings us that emotional fulfillment that we need from a goal. The goal no longer feels empty because we're so obsessing about where we want to get to, and when we get to it we feel dissatisfied because we now have to choose a new goal. If we enjoy the process, then growth becomes much more fulfilling, and if we embrace one another's vulnerabilities and show empathy and compassion and remain humble with ourselves, a lot of the boundaries that cause conflict with one another, or a lot of the walls that we build up between one another, can be broken down, and we can start embracing that more family dynamic, if you like. So recognizing each other as our own soul brothers and sisters, if you like. It's achieving that sense of family connectedness and that core need for nurturing, and setting those emotional foundations within ourselves so that we can feel strong, capable, and better able to help one another through a more loving and nurturing approach that embodies empathy and humility rather than judgment and the need to control and fix. So I hope the lessons from the North Node are fulfilled in your life. I hope that you have an opportunity to learn these lessons, grow and become more empowered. I hope by the end of it that it brings a much richer dynamic between yourself and others, a much more nurturing relationship with oneself, and a greater trust or comfort with embracing our emotions without being overrun by them. So may the North Node lessons bring much growth and transformation. Take care and may be blessed.